Shelina.
Our MasterChef champion is Shelina.
I was the first woman of colour to win a UK TV programme. That was a cookery programme, kind of iconic moment to a certain degree. So it wasn't just Mauritians, it was Caribbean people, it was African people, it was Indian people. It was people who hadn't seen themselves on TV before. On a national scale, thinking about TV programmes and cooking, no one was talking about Mauritian food on TV. And so when I did MasterChef, it was the first time that African food and, Mauritian food was brought to a mainstream TV show. When I got on the show, I remember thinking, I'm so rubbish compared to all these people. These people have eaten in really good restaurants. I didn't want to just win MasterChef and do nothing with it.
Shelina, hi, and welcome to the podcast. You were one of my very, very first guests who I wanted to have on here. Do you remember the email I sent to you about 2 years ago?
I do remember, and it's taken 2 years to get here, but I'm here.
You're here.
Happy to be here.
I really wanted to speak to you, one, for being a Mauritian, two, MasterChef-UK winner 2012, and three, for having figured out somehow our family tree. Our grandfathers
We're cousins.
Second cousins.
Yeah. But we're both Permalloos, which make us family. So that's it.
There we go. For people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I was born in Southampton to Mauritian parents. They moved over here in the 70s. And after uni, I ended up working in equality and diversity for around 8 to 10 years as a project manager in a whole range of different fields. Towards the end of my 30s, a lot of my friends encouraged me to do MasterChef. I was a really good cook. I loved hosting. I think that's definitely the Mauritian.
True.
Which is the cooking, feeding, and just taking.
We love to host.
Have you got Tupperware because you need to take food home with you? And so I entered MasterChef. And to be honest, the last decade or 12 years has just been incredible. I've spent the last 10 to 12 years working in food, having my own restaurant, writing cookbooks, working on TV and doing radio. So it's been really interesting and very busy.
Flex for me because I have one of your books on my kitchen counter. And every time someone comes home and I'm like, I don't know how, we end up talking about MasterChef. And I've always been like, I haven't met you in person. I know we're somehow related. And I was like, my cousin won the MasterChef UK back in 2012. And I'm like, I swear, I'm opening the book and I'm like, here she is.
The thing is, what I love, we as Mauritians are very proud, and we're a small island. So whenever anyone does something good, we do talk about it. So it's really important. And I do feel like when I won the show, the amount of Mauritians, but not just Mauritians, it was, I was the first woman of colour to win a UK TV programme. That was a cookery programme. So it was a really kind of iconic moment to a certain degree. So it wasn't just Mauritians, it was Caribbean people, it was African people, it was Indian people. It was people who hadn't seen themselves on TV before. And I think that was something that I found really interesting. And I think that's the thing that I was most proud of, actually, being able to represent for lots more than just, me. It was almost like so many other people behind me. And it was important to be able to inspire. I think that's kind of what I wanted to be able to do. I didn't want to just win MasterChef and do nothing with it. I wanted to do something. And it was to build a career that would help others, I suppose. So that's kind of where my cookery has always been. When I think about being a child and cooking and being around food, it was always about feeding people, making them feel happy, making them feel safe, making them feel loved. And I think that's what kind of food really meant for me for so many years, really.
I love this, and I do agree from an external party that many people could relate to your journey and watching you on the show. Can we go back to your MasterChef journey? There's a difference between cooking on a regular basis and enjoying it, and there's a different level when you go to MasterChef.
Yeah.
Why MasterChef among all the different kind of shows like Great British Bake Off, other shows as well in the UK?
Yeah, so I remember being an avid fan of MasterChef. Like I used to watch the older series, which was pre-John and Greg. So yeah, I've always loved MasterChef. It was such a I don't know, it was such a classic and iconic TV cookery show.
Okay.
Bake Off was quite new. I think it started in 2010, if I remember correctly. So it was probably only 2 years old. But for me, it was about cooking. So it was more than just baking.
Okay.
And I loved food, but I never had any of the professional culinary skills. We were from a really poor background, so it's not like I'd eaten in all the posh restaurants. You know, for me, we'd had like you know, rogai sardine every night with lentils and
Right.
and rice. Really, really humble. You know, marze pauvre. But to go and do a show like MasterChef and be interested in a show like that, it was a complete upskilling. It was completely different. My friends were the ones that encouraged me. I genuinely just thought it was a joke. We applied, didn't really think much of it. And then all of a sudden I got a phone call from the producers asking me to come in for a trial. And at this time, back in, I think it was 2011, there was 25,000 people who had applied online.
Wow.
And it got down to the first batch of 70 people who were asked to come into the studio and cook for John and Greg. And I was part of that massive people.
What do you think was the criteria there to get to the 70?
So I just remember there was a really heavy application form back then. I don't know what the application form is like now, but they ask you to talk about your food experience, what you love, what you don't love. And they ask you to upload a picture of yourself.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm sure now we would think of like a really professional photo or something. And I literally just scanned a picture of me eating pasta in Italy with like sauce down my top. And I was wearing a bib and it had sauce all over it. And I just thought, that's me. Like, I love eating proper food, authentic food, and food that doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be posh. It doesn't have to be refined. It's food that really kind of touches your soul. And I remember it sort of explaining that in my application form. And at this point, Mauritian food was not known in the UK, if I'm honest. There was maybe between 5 to 10 Mauritian restaurants in the UK. And some of them were really like classic restaurants. Some of them street food.
And they're quite remote, like not many of them being in London as well.
Yeah, and I think on a national scale, thinking about TV programmes and cooking, no one was talking about Mauritian food on TV. And so when I did MasterChef, it was the first time that African food and, you know, Mauritian food was brought to a kind of mainstream TV show. And I think that probably was the point of difference back then, possibly.
And as you went through MasterChef, what did you think of your chances? Did you deep down know that there was a good chance of winning?
Oh, absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really strange thing. And I don't know if this just happens to women. I'm sure it happens to men. But it's just like I genuinely had imposter syndrome. So when I got on the show, I remember thinking, I'm so rubbish compared to all these people. These people have eaten in really good restaurants. They've had experience. They've gone out for meals with their family as children. They just seem to know a lot more about food and a lot more about fine dining. And I remember my first challenge, it was the market challenge where you're asked to go and collect your ingredients with a little basket. And there were so many beautiful things to choose from. Like now, as a chef, I would have chosen something different. But I chose a pineapple, chili, a whole chicken, and then I took a potato and I'm going to make a laddob. Yeah, that's it. With a pineapple salsa and some rice.
I love a good laddob.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, I probably would still make a laddob and it would just be the most fine dining laddob ever.
Yeah.
But it was really like, I butchered that chicken with ease. And the other contestants couldn't do that. And I remember John and Greg apparently had a sort of mini argument about me at this point because Greg said that I was too rough around the edges and I didn't have enough skills. And John said, but her food has flavour. You know, let's not lament the fact that she doesn't know certain ingredients. Think about the way she butchered that chicken. And I remember going in and just bashing it to pieces and, you know, frying it off and turning it into this laddob. And the same with the pineapple. I, you know, chopped it with ease with the skills that my dad taught me, which is to take the eyes out.
I still can't do it,
you know,
by the way.
These things
Yeah.
that I remember watching and learning. But I loved it. I loved every moment I was in the kitchen as a kid. And yeah, I think throughout the process, I would always look at my competition and think I'm nothing like them. And for me, it was always a confidence problem. And I think I probably still have that to a certain degree, but less so now. I think when you hit 40, there's a point in life where you're just like, I shouldn't care anymore. But I sort of cared for so long and I almost watched my competition rather than focusing on me and trying to make myself better. And I think that was one of the things about the competition, that it took me through this confidence journey, and it made me have confidence. And it also made me really proud that it was Mauritian food that I won with, because I could have done a take on Mauritian food. I could have done Mauritian hints of flavours, but it was proper Mauritian food. You know, I did bressons, I did...
Didn't you cook in a pressure cooker?
Yeah, I took my pressure cooker for the finals. It was a proper one from Mauritius.
Were people around you scared? Like hearing the pressure cooker?
No, I think because I clank about in the kitchen, I make quite a lot of noise. I'm a bit of a basher and crasher. Right. I think we were all in separate parts, but I knew for the final I was taking my pressure cooker.
I love that.
I was taking my curry powder, and I took a couple of other things, but the most important thing was a pressure cooker, and it was the one from Flack Market. And Mauritians could see it because it was part of the final that was sent back to Mauritius. And they were like laughing because it was like, wow, she took a proper Mauritian pressure cooker.
I love this because when I was renting before, I was living with flatmates, and I remember when the pressure cooker would go off, everyone in the flat would get so nervous.
Yeah.
Is the flat about to blow up? Which is why I'm asking, like, what was the reaction around the pressure cooker?
Yeah, actually, I think it may well have been some of the first times that they'd had a pressure cooker in the kitchen in MasterChef. They had a different version, which I'd call the European safer version, where you're not kind of on the...
You don't hear the hissing sound.
Yeah, you know, the Mauritian one, you kind of use the back of the wooden spoon, kind of lift up the bit of, you know, the steam. Yeah, the European ones are really safe. They sort of do all the hard work for you. But no, they weren't too scared. I think they just didn't know what I was doing. I think that's the thing. The type of cooking that I continued to connect with was the stuff that I was used to. And I felt that if I could refine that and make it better, then I would have a better chance of showing everyone what kind of food I could cook on a more refined level. And actually throughout the competition, there was a real significant moment where I got sent to the 3-star Michelin in Belgium, and I got to work with this incredible chef at Die Carmeliette, which is the name of the restaurant, and it holds 3 Michelin for over 30 years. And the chef there loved what I did. He was really happy, and I didn't cook Mauritian food, I cooked his food, and he was very happy with the quality of food that I produced.
Right.
But the takeaway was cook what you love and do it really, really well. And it was at that point in the competition where I was like, you know what, I'm going to stick to Mauritian food, but I'm going to refine it. And I'm going to take all the concepts that I know and love, the flavours that I absolutely adore, the things that make me feel safe, and just keep refining it and polish it up. And that's essentially what I did to get to the finals.
After the cooking, during the finals, in the lead up to the results, how did you feel then?
Well, after we'd done the final cook, it was adrenaline. If I'm honest, I don't really remember. It was like a haze. I don't know how athletes feel. I probably think that's probably the same thing after you've just done the race and you're not sure if you've won or not.
Right.
But yeah, there was probably about an hour and a half.
Okay.
So you cook, then they ask you to go back to the green room and you sit there with your other competitors. So I was with Kaj and Tom, and we sat there. And it did feel like a whole day, but we were all exhausted, so we really couldn't talk. And then you were asked to go back in the room after John and Greg had made their decision. And I remember looking at the boys thinking, because I think I was on that side, and I remember looking over at the boys thinking it was going to be one of them. And when my name got called, I remember still looking at them because it hadn't sunk in until it was Codge that hugged me. And that's when I realised I'd won. And I was like, what?
I love hearing this. What's life been after MasterChef?
So it's been so interesting. It's a career that I would never have dreamt of, and it continues to change. So after doing the show, I got thrown into TV and media, which wasn't something that you assume you would do. It was just that Mauritian food and the food that I was cooking was so different back then. So I was doing lots of morning shows, lots of recipes for magazines, just going to do corporate work. It was a lot of fun. So I wrote my 2 cookbooks. I got those done in the first kind of 2 years. And then...
Was that the first one?
Yeah, Sunshine on a Plate and then the Sunshine Diet. So the first cookbook was all about... It was primarily Mauritian food with hints of other aspects, but it was mostly inspired by Mauritian. And then the second cookbook was more global cuisine, with an edge around healthy eating that was quite popular back then, actually, the healthy eating arena, about a decade ago. So yeah, it was all about global cuisine. And then once I'd done all of that, I remember thinking, no, I did MasterChef because I wanted my own restaurant. And you can get really lost in media. and you can stay there. And I remember thinking, I need to leave London, because I was living in London at the time, and it was like, no, I want my restaurant. That's my dream. So I moved back to Southampton, which is where I'm originally from. And I ended up opening a small little restaurant called Lakaz Maman, which I had for 8 years and sold it last year. So it was a real big journey. Having the restaurant was incredible, very difficult. It is not easy to run a restaurant. It's not easy to have navigated the ups and downs of COVID whilst owning a business in hospitality. And I think the other part was kind of trailblazing Mauritian food in Southampton, which is sort of off of the food map. So people would need to travel to Southampton in order to experience the food.
Like I did.
Yeah.
I came to a restaurant.
What did you eat?
What I really loved was there was an octopus tentacle was that with pineapple?
It was. Yeah.
That was my favorite.
Pineapple chili. That would have been all of my family's favourite.
Oh, really? I love that.
Anana and piment. And then one of the other classics was magic bowls, bol renversé, and then sort of elements that you would understand in Mauritian food. Some things are classically Mauritian.
Yeah.
And then other things.
It's more of a fusion, I felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
I think probably less of a fusion and more of a modernisation, because it would take a more modern approach. For example, our home curry is very thin. You know, if we have a curry at home, it's quite a thin sauce.
Unlike maybe Indian gravies, which is more thick.
Exactly. So I did a mixture of the both. And I think it's because at this point, you know, this is over, 8 years ago, especially in Southampton, people would understand a thicker curry, but they wouldn't understand a thin gravy. And it was like, oh, it's not really a curry if it's like a thin gravy. It almost has to feel more like an Indian restaurant in order for them to feel like they're having a curry.
Right.
So I'd thicken it with coconut milk. So we wouldn't normally do that in Mauritian cookery, especially at home, but it tastes delicious. And with all those Mauritian flavours, it's taking all of the flavours and the ingredients of the island and modernising the recipes. I think that's probably the better way to describe it.
And then you sold a restaurant. I was wondering, because that was one of my questions to you. Like, I thought you had closed it temporarily with the intention of opening it again. What led to the decision of closing?
So I'm a single mum, and I think that's a really important part of my life. And it's, I think people only see what they want to see, and they will see me as a professional chef. They'll see me as a restaurateur. They might now see me as a social media influencer. But first and foremost, I'm a mother, and that takes more precedence over anything else. And being a single mum and owning a restaurant is really hard work. So I remember being pregnant, running the kitchen, taking like 5 days off to go and have a baby and come back into the kitchen with her strapped onto my chest.
Wow.
And it just took a lot out of me. And when COVID hit, it was that point in time where everyone had a pause, and it was like, oh, hold on, let's all just reevaluate where we are. And I think in hospitality, there's something about the industry that is very much work hard, play hard. And your family is the people that you work with. And I remember thinking, like, whilst that is important, I want to really look after my staff. I also need to start looking after my family, me and my daughter. So I definitely think it sort of changed my perspective. And I remember having quite a few conversations. It's like, well, how long do you keep something whilst you love it? You know you're transforming. And I suppose as a part of every one of us, we might go through phases that you might like wearing a particular style of clothes, and then all of a sudden it's like, I don't really like this look anymore. I want to change. And we all go through those transformations. And I think the business was an expression of myself for a period of time. And then it became something that I didn't want to have anymore. It was time to let that rest and express myself in a different way. And so that's kind of the whole purpose of closing the restaurant. It's to pause, it's to reset, it's to, change direction for a bit. And then maybe I'll have another restaurant in the future. But my daughter's 7 and I've still got a lot of parenting to do.
She can be your sous chef.
She already is.
Well, she's been doing the voice notes for some of your content creation.
Yeah, she does.
Adorable.
A lot of my social media. So I don't show her on social media. But she has a really, she loves to be in the kitchen. She's always in the kitchen. She loves food. She's very interested in food. I think it was one time she was just like, oh, let me say that then, mummy. And I'm like, oh, okay, go on then. She's like, oh, put some of this in there, put some of that in there. And there you go, guys. Enjoy your food. And that's how her voice came on. And I think more people follow me because of her voice.
It's so cute. Else. So cute. Well, MasterChef UK 2045.
Yeah, let's wait for her to join it.
One of my highlights about your restaurant, though, was that it was an all-female-led management team. Was that the case?
Absolutely. Again, that was very important to me.
And your mum was part of...
She was
very much involved with the restaurant as well.
Yeah, she was involved. And it goes back to the whole, when I said I won MasterChef, it wasn't just for me. I wanted to do a bit more than just win. I wanted to have some kind of legacy. I needed to make a change. And I think it goes back to my background in diversity and equality where, it's really important to continue to shout for those who don't get opportunity. And especially in hospitality back then, we're more than a decade, 12 years ago, there wasn't loads of women in the kitchens. There were some, but there wasn't lots. It wasn't common. And I remember thinking the only way to change things is if you do things differently. And so I was very active about looking for women who had the skills but may have not had the experience. So I remember my general managers, some of them came from hospitality and some didn't, especially my last general manager, Chrissy. She didn't have direct experience in restaurants, but she was excellent in the business. And prior to that, I had Sharon, who was incredible. But Maria, my head chef, she was from Greece and she'd never worked in Mauritian food before. But I would certainly say now she cooks better than a lot of other Mauritian people. The restaurant became my family and it was a kind of collegiate of women who we all kind of held on to each other. And I think that was really important. And Mum was at the helm during its heyday. So she would tell me off for making things not the correct way. Classic.
Why are you changing her Mauritian recipes?
We don't put this in this dish. And I'm like, I know, Mum, but it really works well. And, I know if I do it this way, then I think it's going to be a bit more appealing to the masses. And I think it was just those kind of things. Certain flavours work really well with each other, like octopus and pineapple. You wouldn't know it until you try it.
Right.
But it's not a classic combination that you would find on a home Mauritian menu. And it was just things like that, just playing around. But it was quite fun because we had Mum sort of bringing in her energy. My sister would be in the kitchen every couple of days to go and get her free meals along with my nephews.
Why not? Yeah.
So it was good fun, really good fun.
If you were to take a second to reflect on this relationship between your mum, who's taught you Mauritian cuisine, your daughter who's now 7, she seems to be loving food and being involved in the kitchen as well. There's a commonality there, right? Do you think it's almost like the kitchen is where everyone seems to find themselves almost? Like if we think about our own home where everyone finds themselves in the kitchen around the time of the family meal or like helping mum and dad cooking, something of a sort.
I think it's something that grounds you. And I think it's something that's getting lost, especially in like the modern world of eating where people will sort of take a meal and go into different rooms, or kids might be on their tablets or using tech. And I think eating around a table is something that we often forget is really, really important, or being around the kitchen where things are happening. And I think it's that exchange of conversation. It's the moment where, if we think about going to a restaurant with one of our friends, we're excited because it means we get quality time with some good food. And that's the part that I love at home, but we don't often get that. And I suppose when I think about cooking and I think about my daughter, when we eat together is a time that we get to communicate. And when we're cooking in the kitchen together, it's where we're joined in a common task, which is to get this meal made. I think it was different though, generationally. So I remember growing up, it was more like I was stuck in the kitchen. Does that make sense? So it's like I felt like I was thrown in the kitchen and my brother...
It was a chore.
Yeah, my brother would be off playing football and I was stuck cleaning lentils and rice. And I remember thinking, like, why doesn't he get to do it? But he just got to do what he liked. And then he would come in for dinner. He would just wash his hands and then he's ready for dinner. And he would get the plate of food first. So I think there was definitely like a cultural aspect before. But I do think it's changed. And I think that's the whole point about the generations. We want to hold on to some of our cultural traditions that we love, but maybe we want to shed the things that we don't love as much as well. And I think maybe that's the point of our heritage is whilst we are Mauritian, I'm certainly British Mauritian. And I get this all the time. So when I post my videos on Instagram and TikTok, I get lots of comments, and they'll say like, "Kife tabacos Creole, Tunblia Tolangas," and it's like,
gosh, jeez. But also you have an international audience and you were born here, you lived here
in the UK. And I sort of think, if only you understood that my cooking and me sharing these recipes is my way of keeping our culture, and I'm trying to share our culture. And it's very important that I do that. And it's really important for my daughter to keep her culture. I don't think she's ever going to speak Creole fluently because I can't speak it at home with her because she speaks English. All her friends speak English. And I'm a single mother who was born speaking, you know, we were taught Creole, but my dad passed away when I was 12 and mum was working full time. So at which point would I have been able to continue speaking Creole? And I think that's the bit, every time I see those comments, you know, why can't you speak Creole? You've lost your language. And I think, well, why don't we celebrate the parts that I am doing, which is trying to put Mauritian food on the map and continuing to fight the flag for our culture, I think is really important.
Do you think this was a bit of something you had to juggle, like when you won MasterChef? And going back to the comments about why do you not speak Creole, the fact that you were born here, you grew up here, you have your life here, and you still have Mauritian roots, when you get such criticism, does it get to you?
It used to. It really used to. But yeah, it's just... Originally it was the thing that would get me down, especially Mauritians coming to the restaurant. All the TripAdvisor reviews that were 1 star were from Mauritians.
You joking?
Yeah, and it was like the Mauritians that came never smiled, had one meal, chopped it between 4 people and then left. And it was like Mauritians like you that would rave about it and that would love the experience.
We travel.
Yeah, and it was lovely. And it was like when I met people like you, it made it all worthwhile. And when I saw the other Mauritians, and they were quite two-faced, they wouldn't really say much. They'll take a picture with me and then go and then comment underneath like it was rubbish. Marze Lakaz, it's not Lakaz Maman. Like her mum needs to learn how to cook properly. That is the whole point about social media. But I have gotten to a point where I genuinely don't care anymore, and I'll carry on sharing our recipes. But the recipes are different. That's what I've recognised.
Yeah.
Like I said, like your home ladob versus my home ladob is going to be slightly different.
True.
And you'll get people going, I can't believe she didn't put cumin seeds in it. Or, you know,
How petty.
a rogai with curry leaves. I'm like, I don't never make a rogai with curry leaves.
I never put curry leaves in a rogai.
So many people do. And they're like, oh, she doesn't even know. Getsa, pichi. You know, and you're like,
Also, why are you watching? If you don't like it, just
move.
Yeah.
Swipe on and swipe to the person that you want to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did a bit of Creole on some of the videos, and I just thought,
That's not you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do it. It's just my Creole also, I sound like a grandma because I learnt Creole from the elders. So my Creole is like, I'm literally like an 85-year-old grandma when I speak Creole.
Also, if it's going to take you so much time to have to convey what you're trying to convey, what's the point?
And the thing is, like, yeah, it's completely different. But mum still speaks Creole. So she'll talk, especially when she's angry. But I embrace the fact that we are so global. My daughter's half Moroccan, half Mauritian. And she valiantly describes herself as being pure African. And I love that. I love the fact that she holds on to her identity. But it's because we talk about food. And I get to share Moroccan recipes that I cook with her. I get to share Mauritian recipes that I cook with her. But equally, we are a real diverse and global menu at home, which is really important as well. And I do think kind of that's the whole point about Mauritians. We are one of everything, really. And the island is so ethnically diverse. We are so naturally hospitable. We welcome so many different cultures and communities.
We all look different.
We all look different. We all eat differently at home. And that's one of the other things. When I share a recipe, what I recognise is you make a ladob different to me. You make a rogai different to me. One rochi is someone else's farata. And it's all these different nuances in the food that means that we are slightly different, but we're the same. And I will always say that Mauritius is kind of my soulful home. But I was born in England and I am British, but I am equally Mauritian.
That's very
And
fair.
I'm really proud of both.
As you should. You spoke of representation, you spoke of legacy, and just now diversity. One of the things I really wanted to bring up during my conversation with you was the importance of representation even in your field. I came across your old post where you were a bit more vocal about it, and there was a particular reference to how when you were asked to attend media events, sometimes it was to ask you for your thoughts about the more exotic cuisine, the pineapples and the mangoes. And you were hardly asked about a Sunday roast when you could nicely and very easily make a Sunday roast.
Yeah. So I think this is a thing. So when I first got into the food world, I was different. I looked different. I was cooking different foods. So I'd often get called to do things with a twist. Or it was a summertime and they wanted me to do barbecues with mangoes and coconuts. We would go for a food shoot and they'll have the outfits ready for me. And the outfits that they chose for me were, quite low cut, very bright. Some of them had
something
colourful
colourful.
And I thought, no, I just want to wear a black jumper today.
Not Moana.
The thing is, I do love colour, so it's an unfortunate kind of parody. But yeah, so it was kind of Moana-esque, I suppose. But the whole point was, I was born in the UK, so I'll cook a roast dinner. I can spice it up if I want, but I want to have a classic roast at times as well. But equally, we can talk about the spicing up of things that actually I think a lot of households do that now. There's so much availability of spices and the availability of ingredients that we wouldn't have had 10, 15 years ago. And I do think the world of social media has changed the way people cook. You'll see a recipe on social media and you want to cook it immediately. And this whole craze around trying to find different ingredients, like the noodle craze, which noodle packet you want to go and buy, and they all get sold out. That wasn't the same case for me sort of, 10 or 12 years ago. Social media wasn't as rampant. But I do think diversity matters and being authentic about your cuisine. So for me, I want to be able to share what I can cook naturally. So I don't want to be questioned as to why my Sunday lamb roast doesn't have spice on it. We can often cook it without spice. It may well be made in the very traditional way, but that shouldn't be a bad thing. So I can teach you how to do that. I can also teach you how to make a French menu or, some of my skills around Italian cuisine. But it was the fact that I was never asked to do that. And it was the fact that I was always asked to talk about mangoes and coconuts and a menu with a spice twist in it. And I think that when we look at the world of media, there are some people, mostly men, who have been given free rein. They're allowed to talk about so many different cultural cuisines with ease when they don't come from those backgrounds.
No one questions cultural appropriation then.
Absolutely. I think it's a very sensitive subject, but I do think we're in a slightly different space with social media. I think the rise of social media has allowed people to showcase their talents online without the need for TV. And you've got more people who are way more famous on social media, sharing their cultural heritage and sharing their diversity and sharing their authentic personalities, which may not have happened because TV wouldn't allow it. You always need a producer, you need an agent, you need to have access. And I think social media almost wipes that all away and gives you access to a whole audience. And I love that. I love the fact that we get to see so many different recipes online. We get to see so much different representation. And I'm really kind of pleased about that. It was something that was really needed. I do still think that mainstream cooking shows and TV in particular still needs a shake-up. I don't think we're anywhere near the levels of diversity that we should be having and the levels of authenticness that we need. But I think it's all work in progress.
To be fair, except for you and maybe Nadia Hussein, you two are the only persons of colour that at least I follow closely. But you're right, I haven't seen a big uptick in diversity, which is a shame.
Yeah, I think it certainly has changed in the last 10 to 12 years, but more can be done. And I think that's probably the main answer here, is that a lot more people could have access to those spaces. The issue is it's all about gatekeeping, it's about having access. And it's often who you know, which is always kind of difficult if you're not from that world. So, yeah, I think it's great. Social media has opened up a whole world that new was possible.
Shelina, you've sort of evolved from being a MasterChef participant winner to now being a judge on some shows, being more of a food critique on some shows. Where do you want to go with cooking in general? Where do you want to go with the media outlets in the next few years?
So I'm going to continue on social media because it appears that I'm now an influencer or a content creator, which I never thought I would be.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's great. It's just that this isn't my job. I have other jobs. And I think the hardest part is actually recognizing it is a job. Because for so long it was like, it's not a job. You just have to post online. It's like, no, this is a full-time job. And so I treat it as such. I always plan my content once a week. I'll have a whole day where I film my recipes. And then I'll do ad hoc throughout the week where it's just kind of, I've got a recipe and I want to show people how to do it. So I have that. I do lots of other work, corporate work, cooking, I sort of run my own business. But I think in terms of where I want to go, I just want to continue to share family meals. And I think the perspective that I want to continue sharing it from is from a professional chef. You know, all those skills that I've learned from the kitchen, the fact that we're from a kind of global background, and be able to share those recipes in an easy way. I think the biggest thing is, as a single mum, I've learned how to make things quickly with speed. That doesn't mean that I'm left in the kitchen washing everything up, because I want to be back with my daughter, you know, reading her book before bed. And then I want some time for myself. And I think I've managed to find recipes at work, and when I share that on social media, I get so many people DM me saying how easy the recipes have been, how their kids, they never thought they would eat it, but they do. And that makes me so happy. So I want to continue sharing family meals that are really easy, packed with flavour. And I think that's kind of the angle that I want to continue down.
Oh, I love this. My very last question to you. If you were to suggest to someone coming to Mauritius for the very first time, I'm selfishly asking this because got this bunch of friends coming to Mauritius for the first time. So if you had to suggest to someone, like, you know, what would be like a culinary experience for Mauritius? Where do you go? What were your best recommendations? What would that look like?
There are so many, and I think I wouldn't be able to do it justice. I think this will be a whole podcast on its
All together?
I reckon we need to take this podcast to Mauritius, okay?
Imagine.
So we're going to do the food one in Mauritius, but I really couldn't do it justice. There's so many new outlets for food. Each time I go back, there's more and more and more. So the classics are certain people that I love, that I always go to. So typically, my uncle has a carte in Trododus.
Okay.
So there's a couple of spots in Trododus that I love. Chez Chino's is one of them.
Oh, yes.
And it's very laid back, very chill. The min is incredible, so the noodles are lovely. But I also know that he and his family have a guest house operation where you can eat in the garden as well.
Right.
So it's not just that location. There's another one. So I always have really fond memories of Chez Chino.
Have you been to Tikouloa?
No, I haven't actually.
Yeah, so it's like, no, that's not Lakaz Creole. That's Rougaille Creole.
Okay.
It's in Grand Bay. But Tikouloa is like for boulettes and, you know, the dumplings like
lovely.
boulette. Yeah. It's a very low-key, not fancy place, but it's literally an eye, like a corridor.
Oh, wow. The one on the bus as well. I can't remember the name, but it's only on Thursdays and Sundays. And it's a bus that opens and you can get like a really good curried octopus, which I've had. That was delicious.
Bus snack.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, a lot of them. There are so many.
And what about Basil Poli? Would you still recommend people going there?
So there's Foodies Tour, isn't there? That is an organised trip, which I think is a really good trip for people who are... Look, if you're time sensitive and you're on holiday for a honeymoon or for a wedding, really and truly, it's going to be very difficult to have a full Mauritian food experience. So I do recommend that Foodies Tour for Mauritius. A couple of my friends have done it.
Okay.
And a couple of people who follow me on Instagram, they've gone on that tour and they said it's really good. And they also offer like a vegan offering. So I would suggest that actually. I think that's quite good. But the best experience is always in someone's house. Get yourself in someone's house. And there's so many ways to do it. Just literally make friends with a Mauritian.
Always be invited for food.
And get your invite. And that's it. And that's the best way to experience true, authentic Mauritian hospitality. But there are so many. And I feel bad that I never even had said half of them. I've got many recommendations online. I think I have a bit on my website, which was updated like
I'm going to link
ago.
that, maybe.
It definitely needs a relink. But anyone else who's got recommendations, please let me know, because I want to be able to try them all when I go to Mauritius.
We can get you to test them for us. We'll have a food critic telling us where to go.
I'd love that.
Imagine. Well, Shelina, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're going to have many people who follow you already who would want to listen to this. I've personally had people recommending me to get Shelina on your podcast.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, yeah, definitely. And by the way, we have tried for the past 2 years. Thank you so much. It means so much that to me that you've made time to be here today.
It's been a pleasure.
What would be your last words to your followers watching you today?
To my followers, I just want to say, like, whatever your dream is, don't be shy to do it. And I think have confidence, because I think that's the thing that we often lack, confidence in our own skills. And if there is something that you love, continue doing it and try and find a way to incorporate it into your life more, especially with food. If there's something that you love in food, just go for it. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. So DM me personally and I'll get back to you. But a massive thank you for everyone that supported me over the years as well. Everyone that's come to the restaurant and all of the lovely followers online. So I feel very, very loved, which is a good thing.
I'm glad. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Gemma. Alongside my full-time job, I host a podcast and I also create finance and self-development contents on this channel. If you like the content so far, please consider subscribing. There is a new video out every week and I hope to see you in the next ones as well.